listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between a fit body and positive mental health. And our big mission? It's to help 10,000 runners to develop fitter minds in the next 2 years. I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Welcome to this episode of the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we talk to Shaun Kaesler. Shaun is one of the people behind the Ultra Series events. These are trail running events all around Australia where you get to test just what you're made of over very, very long distances. Shaun is very, very passionate about bringing these kind of events to people here in Australia. And I'd be very surprised if you don't run out and sign up for an ultra after listening to this podcast. Enjoy. Today on Fit Mind, Fit Body, I am excited to bring to you Shaun Kaesler, all the way from Western Australia. Now, I didn't know anything about Shaun except that people on my podcast had been mentioning his name a lot over the last maybe 6 months or so when we've been talking about these backyard ultras and things. So I've annoyed him a lot and he's agreed to come on. So welcome, Shaun.
Thanks very much for having us. It's quite the honour.
I know you've been super busy with all the races and things, and we'll get into that shortly and you can tell people more about them. I have tried to dig into it a bit because I had no idea what they meant, what was involved in a backyard ultra. So I needed to ask a lot of questions to all of the people that I talked to who have been entering your races. And so we did dig into it a little bit, but it's going to be really interesting to hear it from your perspective, somebody who organises these events. But sure. Before we do, let's get into you. So what's your story? Where do you come from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Australia on a country farm in the Riverland in a place called Loxton. And spent, I guess, the first 17 and a half years of my life there. Tried to go to boarding school in Adelaide and that didn't really work for me. I got pretty homesick. I couldn't really make a lot of mates or a lot of friends up in the city, and the city life, like just stuck in, coming from a massive 5,000 acre farm with, a big bedroom and big farmhouse and living in a dormitory with about 5 square metres to myself just wasn't my ideal studying and life education choices. So, I headed back to the farm spent the last couple of years in high school there and got into uni in Adelaide, but that wasn't really for me either. I didn't actually end up going to uni. I just went straight into a bit of extra study for hospitality and then moved to Alice Springs. So,
oh, wow.
Spent a few years in Alice. Yeah, went travelling around Australia a bit with my girlfriend at the time then, and had, I think, 56 cents left in our bank account by the time we got up to Port Stephens, just north of Newcastle, and went, righto, what are we going to do for here? We were trying to get up to Cairns to move to Cairns, but we'd just run out of money, and so we ended up moving over to Perth, where her mum lived, and grew up over here and had 5 kids and then went different paths in life in the end several years back, and then I kind of got into running around those sort of times of the kids growing up, and it's just led me to a path which I never knew I was going to be walking a handful of years ago.
So back when you were at school, did you do much sport then? Was that a big part of your life?
Yeah. I was definitely, well, they say long distance running back then, but it was like 800 metres and 1,500 metres. So
felt like a long
5 and 10K and a bit of cross country and stuff then as well. So, and I was pretty decent at it then. So I still had some high school records up until I think 2 years ago. So,
okay.
But it was something I probably never, if I'm honest, I didn't take very seriously. I didn't really train too much, which is still my problem in running now. Just go in and kind of wing it. So I probably could have been a bit better than I would have been, but never world class or anything. But certainly certainly respectable at the time.
Yeah. And do you remember enjoying it? Like, was it a thing that you went, oh, yeah, this is good?
Oh,
You know how some kids, it's like they don't want to do it. But was it something you were looking forward to?
Yeah, I loved it. It was probably, in hindsight, I wish I'd almost known ultra running back then, because, 800 metres and 1,500 metres is lots of training for something that happens very quickly and is over. Whereas, one thing I love now in running is the switch off, the escape, the time to turn off work, to turn off life, and just be at one with my mind and with the environment that I'm in. So I guess maybe that's one thing that I probably would have liked to have been a bit wiser about in life. So my mind is, as much as it's my biggest asset, it's also probably my biggest amount of maintenance as well, and it always needs to keep pretty busy. So longer stuff is great for me mentally. So
you can just kind of switch off or on, depending on what it is your brain's doing.
Some of my best ideas in life have definitely come to me out in the trails. So.
Why, in many ways, you wish that you had tapped into the longer running because of the benefit that you now find as an adult with the distance running for your mental health? Just being able to
I guess there's, probably even back there was just nowhere near as much research or knowledge into, mental awareness and mental health. And I guess ultra running and certainly trail running were nowhere near as big as what they are these days. So, I'd be interested to see the current statistics, but I know in the last couple of years that trail running was the fastest growing participant sport in the world.
Wow.
So, I know ultra marathons fit under a slightly different category, but it's certainly all in the same part. And I think that there's just that realisation at how amazing, running can be. Look, don't get me wrong, some people are always going to hate it because it's just not their bag. So, but, for me and obviously for so many of my mates around me, because that's who I surround myself in, it is just, running is so amazing for the mind. And look, I won't say it saved me, but it was certainly what gave me a much greater purpose in life. And like I alluded to before, when I had the 5 kids and I was always been a workaholic. I've always done as much as I can and always wanted to keep busy and and I really always had to. I had 7 mouths to feed, so always wanted to provide. So I did work hard, and it was certainly to the detriment of me being a dad and relationship wise with my first wife. That certainly distanced us because I was always working, and we just grew apart. And I guess one part of me trying to find who I was is when I started getting into the longer distance or into running. I started with 5K and then grew up from there. And that was probably late 2000s, I suppose.
Okay. And how old were you then, Shaun?
Was where I was probably 30-ish,
okay,
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I ran my first marathon maybe at 30 or 32, 31, somewhere around there. I don't really keep track of it, but just being out in the trails and spending a few hours switching off from other stuff was in I can definitely say now was one of the greatest decisions I've ever made in life, because it has led to it's had such a domino effect. Even now, a dozen years later or 15 years later, potentially, it's still having such a domino effect on how my life has evolved around running now. And I'm really grateful that I did wake up to myself and realise that I needed to invest a little bit in my own self preservation, I suppose, and that was through running.
So what kind of work were you doing, like in that burnout period?
I was probably I think I would have been a retail manager at Harvey Norman.
Yep.
So I know I did that for a few years at a few of the stores over here in Perth. They used to run the electrical department. It would have been about then. Then I went into selling cars for Toyota, new car. I was always in the retail and sales background a bit, as well as a bit of hospitality. And then actually we started from scratch a construction company. So did that in early 2011, 2011. And that we were more hardscaping and landscaping, but we eventually just digressed, I think is the right word, down to concreting. And we had we got voted as Perth's best concreters in about 2015 or 16.
Wow.
And we grew that in like 3 years to something pretty amazing. We had a couple of trucks and a couple of teams working for us, and that was awesome. And then somewhere in that period, I'd also gone and been part of Coast to Cosy as a crew.
Yep.
And just fell in love with the culture that was behind such a niche long distance event, and thought we could bring something like that to WA and set the wheels in motion. And then it was supposed to just be a hobby and put a few events on over here, and it's just grown into a behemoth that is certainly just life and then some on top of that, with interest, I think.
So do you still do, like, for those of, I guess I alluded to it in the beginning, that you are the event organizer and owner, I assume, of a couple of ultra trail running type of events, which we can get to shortly. But do you still do other work now, or are the events your main thing?
Well, it's all based around trail running now. So we have obviously ultra series. So we have 15 events around the country. Mm-hmm. And so my best mate and best man from my wedding, Wayno, we're partners in the Tribe and Trail running store over here in Perth.
Oh, okay.
So that's actually where our office is for Ultra Series. We run out of an office in the same building, and but I'm more a silent partner with that. Wayno runs that full time.
Do you sell online as well?
Yes, yeah. We're online, and then also we started online just out of my home office a few years back when we're trying to move merchandise with a proper system through Ultra Series. And then because there was no trail running stores here in Perth, people were saying, "Oh, can you get this brand, and can you get this, can you get that?" So it just kind of grew from there, and then again it just grew into something a lot bigger than we were expecting, and we're now a shop front and heaps of online stuff as well. So we're still in the growing phase. We're only been in the shop for maybe 18 months. Oh no, not even. Oh no, actually no, I think it might have even been 2 years. I'm not sure. I get a bit lost in all that sort of stuff, but we're growing pretty well, and look forward to being here in that capacity for many, many years. And then I'm also with another great mate, partners in a new venture that we're about to launch called Run Bus Australia, and that is a massive coach. So it was an old Trans WA coach, which was like a rural coach, like a big 48-seater coach, which we've completely stripped out and then refitted again. And we've got 24 coach seats in there and about 23 beds. And we're going travelling all around the country, doing trail running tours for anywhere between kind of 4 days and I guess 2 weeks. So with all sort of international guests coming from overseas, some local, some Australian elite runners coming to host some of the events, and then just generic, just trail running tours with mates. Camping cool. at caravan showers and whatnot. But it's a really cool venture. That's that'll be we're doing our first tours in the middle of the year. And it'll be based we'll do state-based tours. We're starting in Perth, and then it's heading over the Nullarbor to SA, and then moving on from there. So, and that's just something a little bit left to centre. But we think will be really, really cool. So, so yes, trail running certainly nestled its way well and truly in everything I do.
So you don't do concreting anymore?
No. No, sadly, not have any time for that at all. So we ended up just pulling back on that as the events side of things just grew.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where it just grew exponentially, and I just walked away from the concreting, and because I had another mate that could take on all the work, and so I just handballed it all to him, and we just focused on Ultra Series and haven't looked back since, even during a pandemic. So
I do feel like because I've been an entrepreneur myself, we touched on that, talked a little bit earlier to you offline, for a very long time, and I'm always looking for and interested in other people's stories in this space, because it's, what do you think for you has helped, what appears on the surface now that you've had quite a bit of success, no matter what industry you're in, whether it was, the concreting sort of stuff that you're talking about at that business, and now you're sort of rolled into this event space and you're not just being static either. You're obviously developing lots of interesting things off, the core of running. What do you think has been that the spark of something that you've been able to do that? Like, a lot of people, their lives are littered with, or especially entrepreneurship, it's littered with lots of things that haven't worked, as well as things that worked, of course, if they're still being entrepreneurial. But
look, there's definitely things that haven't worked for us. There's certainly lots of events that we've tried, and look, there's even many events that have been incredibly successful, but they've just been a little bit too much more than we can handle. Like there's one event here in Perth called the OMFG festival, which we run for On My Feet group, which is a homeless or a charity supporting homeless and at need people here getting back on their feet through running. And so we've set that up, and financially it was a great event. But we realised it was set in the start of January, and we're trying to now create a bit of a 12-week block there that we couldn't do it. So we've actually handballed it to the On My Feet group to run now. So instead of us just raising part funds, they're now going to make 100% of volume from the event out of it. So obviously after expenses, but that can be a really great annual fundraiser for them now. And they've got lots of the right people behind them too to make it happen. So, but I guess, look, everything I've always taken on, I've wanted to be the best that I can at it, which is kind of a little bit of a contradiction in myself, because I never dedicate enough time or of myself to that thing. Like in my running, I could be a lot better runner than what I am if I trained or dedicated and put time and energy to it. But I guess there's a point which isn't really defined, but there's a point where you go, well, I want to enjoy what I'm doing as well. So, if I put too much of something into it, it becomes unenjoyable, and then, I might get better results, but it's not going to be sustainable. Whereas I like trying to find a medium where it's successful enough to survive, and then, but successful enough also to be sustainable mentally and enjoyment wise, because like I think I alluded to in the start, my brain takes a fair bit of maintenance. Well, not maintenance, I guess it just constantly needs to be busy. And I guess my way of doing that is striving to be think outside the box a little bit, trying to put on exciting stuff. One of my favourite things that I love doing at life is going, well, why can't we do that? Or why can't it be done this way? And, I get quite a buzz out of bringing on new, like we've never done, no one's ever come up with a front yard ultra, which is a different, it's a backyard ultra. It's exactly the same, but instead of it being out in the bush or out at out somewhere that's not in the city, we're like, well, let's do one of these, but right in the heart of the city, right in our front yard, and we'll call it a front yard ultra. it's exactly the same format, but that's just what we're looking at doing. And from there, it's now grown this year. It's kicking off in March. It is now the world's biggest backyard ultra. It's the biggest in the world by, we're going to have probably 60 or 70 more than ever had before in the country. So in the world. So,
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. Nearly 500 of these events in something like 40 odd countries around the world. So, to have little old Perth, with an event that's only going into its third year, grow to be the biggest in the world is pretty cool. So,
that's amazing.
But that same thing of going, well, why can't we call it a front yard ultra? And why can't we run it around the lake? And why can't we do, something of that's different to what is out there, but it works on the same principles, but it's just making it a slightly more exciting. And we get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of spectators down to that event because it's so accessible. People come down on Friday night and come and cheer on everyone. I think come down on the weekend.
It's been mentioned on this podcast. I think Belinda mentioned it from Perth. Yep. And I've spent a little bit of time in Perth and was not far from Hillary's and so I actually knew where sort of roughly.
Oh, yeah.
I went, oh, where that is. So that was kind of really cool, I thought. Yep. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit more about the backyard, front yard ultras in a minute. But first, just a little bit about your personal experience with running and why you actually started to run yourself, like back before you became an event organizer. Obviously, I know, well, actually it's not obvious, but, you mentioned with the kids and the work and that you something had to give or whatever. How did that happen? Like,
look, I guess,
why did you start running?
Yeah, well, like I alluded to with Coast to Cozzy, it started with Coast to Cozzy and being around those people. Being around those people was, I don't know. I love to surround myself with really good people because you want to. I think if you surround yourself by people that are doing good things or that have been inspiring or just have a really great heart. You kind of want to pluck some of their attributes and try and try and add that to your life because I think it's really healthy to. I think it's really healthy to be in a positive place because it just has so many repercussions if you can be positive yourself. And I always like to be really optimistic about pretty much everything. So, with the exception of complaining neighbours, I'm not optimistic or patient with them. But anyway, in all seriousness, I guess there was something at Coast to Cozzy which really just sparked a fire in me, and I've always been great mates with a guy over here in Perth called Rob Donkersloot, and he used to do an event here called Kep Ultra, and even that was the same thing. Little events with a flair for having really amazing people involved in it. And I found that really stood out from road running for me. And road running, you kind of just get lost in the crowd a little bit because these events are so big. Tens of thousands of people to some of the events, I guess. And whereas, with ultra running and this ultra long distance running, it was always a much smaller crowd, a much more personalised crowd. And one thing that really stood out was that everyone at the events want to do the best they can to help you finish. They want to do everything they can to get you to that next aid station, to get you to that finish line, to help you succeed. And it's amazing what people can bring out of you with a bit of encouragement or just, giving you a zucchini slice when you didn't realise it was the most amazing thing you could have put in your gob at that time. So, just little things like that. And I found myself just wanting more and more to be surrounded by these people, and I just knew that WA, like we really didn't have any ultra. Oh, we had 2 or 3 ultra marathons, great ultra marathons over here at the time, but we didn't have a series or didn't have a community really based around ultra running in WA at all. So, and I'm like, look, I really think that this is the opportunity for me. You know, this is maybe my calling at the time to start something. Or to start a community that was all based around all these great attributes, which I'd seen at events in WA and also not in WA. Well, the KEP had it, but certainly over east, and I did some events overseas, and they're just what we had the opportunity to bring to Perth was incredible, and you know, I started off pretty ignorant and wide-eyed, but willing to learn and winging it. If I'm honest, you know, you got to fake it till you make it, they say. And fortunately, I had a fair bit of guidance through Rob because he'd already set up events. I think at the time he was even he was certainly on the AURA, Australian Ultra Runners Association committee, and later on became president. And you know, he had a fair bit of base or a foundation to help me get started, and then. You know, I think we added 3 events in the first year, and then we teed up with another mate at the time of Ron McGlynn with an Australia Day Ultra, and so we had 4 events there between us for a year, and then it just kind of just grew from there. So you know, 60 or 70 runners in the first event for the year we were stoked at, and then it grew up to like 150, and then it grew up to 200, and then like 250 and 300, and this is all for ultra distance or based around an ultra distance event, was just phenomenal. And you know, that for us, we kind of looked at it and went, well, you know, where does it stop, or where do we stop? And eventually, like last year, we had 22 events planned on the calendar.
Oh, wow.
I'll diverse a little bit shortly about how that came about, but you know, we realised 22 was too much. We ended up stripping it back to 19, and then this year we've culled it back to 15. And again, like I said, you know, nearly all of the events were an amazing success. We just had to pull back on some so that we could give amazing events and not just good events to lots of people. I want to do amazing events to, you know, fewer people if that's what it takes to make sure that the experience is pretty memorable. So. Yeah, and I guess it was all going pretty great. In 2020 was going to be a year of you know, I guess really finding our feet and settling into what we'd spent a few years beforehand building on, and then of course the world changed for everyone, and we ended up. All we actually did was I took 6 weeks off. I think in March when everything had closed, and I just literally closed up everything for 6 weeks, closed up all the orders, closed up registrations, and just said, look, I'm just taking 6 weeks off to see how things unfold. And then I said, I'll come back to you from then and give you a bit of an idea on what's going on. And within that 6 week period, I had some people get in touch with me about taking over some events in South Australia. And then, so I guess the conversations were started then, and then we opened up not registrations again, but we opened up the emails and you know, communication and socials again, and said, righto, we're back. We've got a bit of an idea on what's going to happen, and you know, I guess it was we took a bit of a gamble, which I'm always doing. Not always pays off, but I love the what if. You know, what if
you don't
we do?
Risk? Risk's important in this kind of endeavours. Look, most endeavours worthwhile doing.
Well, look, we had no idea how long the pandemic was going to go. We were hoping maybe 6 months, and so we ended up, you know, fortunately for our WA events, based events. That were more a intrastate ultra marathon. We grew absolutely exponentially in them because we were pretty closed. You know, the borders were closed in WA, and so everyone in WA those events. And look, to be honest, that was an absolute saviour for us because our international events. So Irrational South in South Australia, like big 200 milers, big 100 and 200 milers, where we get people from all over the country, but also get quite a few internationals come over to run them. And look, we have the only 200 milers, the only Triple Crown of 200 milers in the Southern Hemisphere, one of only two in the world that have them. And we also have the only point-to-point 200 milers in the Southern Hemisphere as well. So, they're a draw card, but literally of, the few years of energy and investment building them, they almost got mothballed because, we had, I think, 25 could run one in Perth, and I think 16 could run one in WA. In SA.
Wow.
And, the New South Wales one that we'd planned on launching in 2020, just got pushed back a couple of years in the end. So I guess we, rather than just sitting on what we had, we thought, look, if we're going to do this, we knew that lots of people were stripping back and lots of people were, potentially even going to go under or just not be able to put on events for a couple of years or at that time we thought at least a year. And we had some people in SA, when we announced that we were taking over the Hyson 105, say, look, please don't postpone this event or don't cancel it. If you can get approvals for it, do it, because the SA community really, really needs this, because everything around you has been cancelled. And as it turned out, I couldn't even get into SA because the WA borders were absolutely jammed shut. So we organised it with me running it remotely out of the office, and I had 4 or 5 amazing people jump on as race directors in SA. We pulled it off. The numbers for the event went from, it had been going for 9 years, I think, 8 or 9 years, and they'd never had more than, I think they had 213 sign-ups, but about 160 runners. And that year we had 400 runners come and run it.
That's amazing.
4 or 5 people on the ground ran it remotely. My family all live in SA, so they got involved as well and helped crew and help officiate it. And it was just the most amazing event. And people came out. The aid stations were electric. Like, I remember the Mount Compass aid station, watching it live on the videos, and there was just, I won't say hundreds, but there was certainly 60 or 70 or 80 people there as crew supporters and cheering everyone on. And that was it. That was the trigger that just set off us to create Ultra Series SA. And yeah, I guess over the next 2 years, even during a pandemic, we invested so much time, energy, and certainly financially. We went and saw Mr. Bankman, and we set up a warehouse or shared a warehouse in SA and bought a truck and bought a trailer and bought another vehicle for over there, and bought another whole set of equipment for there, and went into SA and I guess we came out of it. I think we grew probably 200% year on year for the next 2 years in participants and in turnover and stuff like that. But of course, because we invested so much, we made way less money. And it's not about the money, but I mean, we obviously still want to survive. But certainly the accountant looked at me after last year and went, "Righto, what's your plan?" But it's all about setting a foundation, and we wanted to create ultra. There's great events already in SA. Don't get me wrong, and there's some really good ultra marathons, and there's some amazing like Trail Running SA do a really great shorter distance all on the trails, and their setup's fantastic. But what we really want to specialise is that really long stuff. 200 milers, multi-day stuff, backyard ultras. Stuff from 50K and above kind of thing. So because it comes to that point where, people can go and run a 5K, they can do part run. Then from there, they can go and do a 10K, and then it just grows and grows. And we want to plant that seed out and go, well, what if? What if you could run 100 miles? What if you could run 200 miles? And up until a few years ago, there wasn't a platform to do that anywhere in the Southern Hemisphere. You had to really go to Europe or to go to America to be able to do that. So I guess that's where, the whole Ultra Series SA thing grew on top of what we'd already built in WA, was going, well, why can't we provide these platforms for people to go and do more than what is already there, and go and do a lot. I don't want to take away at all from what's already there, because people are doing it great and they're doing it amazing. But there is this niche, and that's what Ultra Series is. We're a niche market for ultra long distance marathons or ultra marathons. And that's where we've really diversified that, in the backyards, which I believe we're going to touch on. But that's where we've really diversified into. They're all about, creating a platform there for the people to achieve astronomical rewards for themselves, not necessarily for anyone else, but for themselves, which mentally has, obviously physically it's great for your body, but mentally, because I just think it's so much more mental than physical. Mentally, it just sets you up on the most amazing platform in life. It has repercussions to your family, has repercussions to your kids, to your partners. It does to work too, though. You can go to work and be almost invincible because of what you achieved on the weekend in your personal life. So even
if you're hobbling up and down stairs.
Yeah, but it asks questions, and it's like,
exactly.
Well, why are you hobbling? What did you do on the weekend? And then you start talking about, suddenly you're opening the blinkers to other people. And this is what it is. It's all organic. It's all organic and that happens, just by someone who I don't even know talking about what they did at one of our events somewhere, which I'm, it might not have had that personal connection, but they've come and done something because we laid an opportunity or a platform there for them to be able to do it. And in doing so, suddenly it gets their people at work talking about why they're hobbling, and then they're inspired. So
I love that. There's something that I played with or have been playing with about running being our superpower that we just need to tap into.
100%.
And so what you're actually doing is giving people an opportunity to, as you said, tap into what is their own superpower that everyone has. It's nothing about winning or any of that. It's just about getting to that finish line and realizing that you can do it. I suppose that pretty much everyone can do it, as long as they, be a bit sensible about how they train and stuff like that. But it's all possible. You just have to have a plan and then start.
Plan and a platform.
Plan and a platform. Love it.
If it's there, well, then the only thing that's stopping you is yourself. I think that's
one thing one thing that I've talked about a bit on the podcast is when we, as just runners, have had those moments where everything's flowing and where everything feels amazing, but you often then, as you said, take that into your life. And it means if you can achieve whatever it is, and it often happens around some of those flowy moments or some of those great big achievements, there are other things it feels like there's nothing in your life that you can't do. If you can run blah, blah, blah. When I first ran to work, which was 21 kilometers at the time, that felt like crazy, because everybody I knew drove to work, where I went. And so when I actually did that in my 20s, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, what can I do? And that's what you're doing. It's that opening those doors and realizing to people, actually, there is no limit to the only limit to what we can do as humans is what we set up. And then if you can break through each of those limits that you've set up for yourself, then, it's kind of unlimited, isn't it?
Well, exactly. I guess another great example is before Delirious West 200 miler was held, we're coming into year 5 now in a few weeks' time. There were 5 Western Australians that had ever run a 200 miler anywhere in the world. And then when we, like an actual 200 miler event, not necessarily the distance, they might have run 500 or multi-day or whatever, but an actual event. Now in Western Australia, there's over 100 West Aussies that have run 200 miles.
Wow.
Same thing in Australia. I only knew of a couple that had ever done it. And now after a couple of years of Irrational South being there, we're up in over a couple of dozen now there. And this year, Irrational South entries are up nearly 400%. So You know, we're going to have a whole heap more South Aussies added to that. But it's also overall, you look at it in Australia, you know, 200 milers 5 years ago were virtually non-existent, and you know, there was probably 50 or 60 people that had ever gone and done one overseas. Whereas, you know, now we've got a few hundred that have done it, thanks to a platform being here down under to be able to achieve this stuff. And I think that's really important to sometimes reflect on stuff like that, at why we're doing it. Because if we didn't do it, you know, there's not necessarily someone next to us that's going to stand up and do it, because it, you know, it is high risk. It is a huge amount of work. It is
being a race director, I understand, especially of an ultra as well, that goes, you know, away from where safety, you know, into trail running, you know, ultra. There's all sorts of sleepless nights involved in that.
We had an event in the Blue Mountains in I think June or July last year. And the amount of planning went into that was way beyond anything I'd ever done before. I was away from home for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And, you know, that wasn't just me. We took a whole team there. We had people come from everywhere. And the planning for that was ridiculous. But people only see us for the week of the event. You know, expect that, you know, expect that that's all we put into it. But it's... yeah, it's phenomenal, the amount of work, and I guess I am proud now. It took me several years to use that word in what we've set up, but you know, now after coming through the other side of a pandemic, and you know, I was talking this morning with Simone, who's my officer in the office, and 5 of our first 6 events this year coming up already are at record numbers, and that's so rewarding. And to be honest, it's quite emotional to come through the other side, because the last few years they were tough. You know, I know we grew, and you know, I'm sure we put on a pretty brave face on the face value of things, but you know, behind the scenes we were just juggling and you know, sorting things out to make sure that you know, all our payments were met, and look, I know we expanded, which you know, was a ballsy thing to do at the time, and you know, I wouldn't have changed it. I'm so grateful we did, because I've now got some amazing friends and even, you know, work colleagues in South Australia, and now we've moved our Blue Mountains event up to Cairns, and you know, I'm just so grateful that we did, because we've expanded our philosophies on what we're trying to do. A lot of the Ultra Series events have a really, really generous cutoff, or almost non-existent cutoff in certain events, and that's because we want to encourage hikers to come out and do what we do. And you don't have to be fast. You don't have to be a runner. You know, you can be a jogger, you can be a hiker, you can just come out and be at one with yourself and the environs, and find a better version of yourself if that's what you're looking for, because I'm pretty confident that probably 95% of the people at our events, particularly the really long ones, are there for a mental reason. You know, and that's could be a whole number of things. It could be to help work through depression. It could be to get over a divorce. It could be to mentally get more confident. It could be, you know, just to mentally open up their mind to the fresh air that's getting into them. But, you know, I think it's really important. And we, to be honest, last year I probably lost that a bit, because we were so busy and had too many events that I lost a bit of why we're doing what we're doing. You know, and we took quite a good break off over Christmas to recharge and refresh, and to reflect on what Ultra Series is about. And what I guess the best line that I can ever think of, what I always want to be and what I want to check myself at, is that Ultra Series always needs to be a community and not a corporation. So we give back. A lot of people don't see it, but we give back tens and tens of thousands of dollars a year to charities. To do like there was a 2-week period. It wasn't just in this year just gone. It was actually a year before. We gave away over $65,000 worth of race entries leading up to Christmas. This Christmas just gone, I think we did $1,000 worth of race entries. Just because it's giving back to the people that help grow us to what we are. And look, all we try to do, Simone obviously wants to earn a living out of it because of all the hours she puts in, and I'm exactly the same, you know.
Yeah.
I just want to earn a living and everything on top of that, where we're going to give back to either the community or back into Ultra Series to give you a better experience. It's just such a rewarding industry to be in. Like I said, I'm surrounded by the most incredible human beings in so many different areas. And I just love feeding off of what we get. It's like my drug, I suppose. It is my drug to refeed back into it and just give more and more back to what it is that we've got. It's a beautiful thing. Look, Ultra Series is a really, really beautiful environment to be in. And I just love that we're now got a bit more time for that this year, and I hope more people come to share it. Obviously, you know, it's looking that way. And, you know, every one of our events is certainly different to another one. We've done that very purposefully and specifically, you know, and one event of ours isn't necessarily going to appeal to someone else that might do another event. But that's great because then we get to meet more people and we get to, again, cater that niche to a different crowd to what our other event is for. So, I don't want to be boring. I don't want to be complacent.
Which brings me to a question, that I had, which was, how on earth did you come up with those names for the Ultra Series events?
I don't know. We look, our 3 200-milers and 100-miler collabs are west, east, and south. And then it all started with Delirious. We were trying to come up with, you know, a place where people were going to go during this event, and obviously Delirium was one of them. So that got to Delirious, and then it kind of that fed the other ones into Irrational South and Unreasonable East. You know, they kind of all went hand in hand. We do kind of have in the back burners the Nonsensical North planned, and that is actually we've kind of mapped that all out. It's actually in Ireland.
What?
So yes, it's in Ireland, hence it's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, that was supposed to be launching in 2023. But that's kind of, whether that ever comes off the ground or not now. I really want to improve on what we've got here first, and then once I can say we've got them nearly perfect, well then maybe we'll revisit that. So, but it's there waiting for us if that opportunity comes, but or more to the point, if we create that opportunity. Look, the Feral Pig Ultra is the most intense ultra marathon in a really, really remote part of the Perth Hills, but it's actually only right near Perth, but it is so remote because there's just nothing out there. It's all national park, apart from a tiny bit of civilization. Like you run 43K to get to the first aid station in the 100-miler. You then run 70K before you even get to the first road crossing, and then another 50K before you get to the second road crossing.
Wow.
So it is really remote, but it kind of runs up and down, like parallel with the coast, up and down the Perth Hills, but it's in a remote part of it. And that was originally created because where we first mapped a course out and we ran it kind of fat ass in the first year, the head looked like the shape of a pig. And feral pigs are quite synonymous for being out in the bush out there. And that all came together. we used to have the wild goose chase because we'd send everyone on this goose chase out in a national park, trying to look for the course, and hysterical carnage.
That's right.
Loxton, that's in my old hometown, and that's because there's a place there called the Historical Village, which is actually where the course runs through the village all throughout the event, like for 48 hours or however long it's going to go for. And it's this old period reproduction village that they've built, and they come out in period clothing for some of it and stuff like that too on their open days. And so that historical and hysterical kind of linked in. I knew it was going to be carnage, so that's kind of how that came together. No Time to Die was actually a competition we did for that one, which came up with that name for it. Birdie's Backyard and Hurdy's Front Yard was quite cool. Birdie's Backyard was originally held on a mate's property in the very first year called Birdie. Yeah. That was in his backyard. And then we ended up moving it to another location, but with the Birdie's title. Then we came up with wanting to do one in the front yard, and it happens to be around Herdsman's Lake, and there's a tavern on Herdsman's Lake called Hurdy's.
Of course.
So the Birdies and Hurdy's worked in beautiful synergy with each other. So, and then look, some of the other events, Light Horse Ultra was originally going to be on the Light Horse Trail. And I have quite close connections to return service personnel. Wayno, my business partner I was telling you about, and best mate, he's an ex-digger. My sister is, my brother-in-law, my dad, my granddad. So we do an event. It's the Australia's biggest 24-hour ultra marathon. Plus we do 6 and 12 and 3 and 1 hours with it. Yeah. And we give free entry to all past and current serving personnel of the services from whatever country you're from. If you served in Uruguay, if you served in the UK or South Africa or wherever, we don't care. We don't judge that. If you serve for your country, come along and be part of it. And then obviously we have hundreds of others that come along and pay for their entry as well. And that's a really important event to us. That is held in April each year in the suburbs of Perth. And then when we move over to SA, Hyson was already one that was there. So we just took over that. SOS, which is on the York Peninsula. That's a 500K stage race. It's the biggest stage race in Australia. And that is basically, it's around an area where there is, I think, 93 shipwrecks on the coast over there. I'm just pulling a number off the top. I know it's astronomical. It's the SOS, but it's actually called Sink or Survive, 500K stage race. So you either sink if you're going to pull out, or you survive if you can make it through. So that's a solo, duo, or team event. And then Blair National Park is where we hold the Blair Marathon. So that all kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, that one's a bit boring, that name.
Yeah. But it is really cool because we get people entering the Blair Marathon thinking it's going to be just a marathon, which it is distance-wise, but it is technical and it is single trail and it is climb. Like there's a 5K solid climb in it and everything. So we get all these road runners coming into it and run it, and they're like, "Oh my god, like that was the best marathon I've ever done." And I'm like, "Of course it was." Yeah, I love that. So that's quite, that catches quite a few people out. So
where can people go to see all of? Like, do you have a place where all of that's listed?
Everything now is just ultraseries.com.au. Okay. So technically, Series WA, Ultra Series SA, and Ultra Series Australia for our international and interstate big events, for ones that are basically to an international market. But now we just it's just easy to put everything under ultraseries.com.au because it's all there for all, and it's actually all broken up on there to where you might want to do the calendars on there, the whole thing. So it's easy.
You've made me want to come back to longer running again. Mind you, that's what's happened with everybody I've talked to.
Pretty fast.
Sorry, you don't have to be fast.
No, you just come along and get engrossed in the stupidity and sadism of what we're doing, and find that there's several other people alongside you doing exactly the same thing.
We're just as silly. The one things I've noticed on the podcast with all of these ultra trail running people, and many of them have come or have run one of your races or more, they talk about how people who run trail runs, which is what you talked about before too, they're just a really nice bunch of people, as in they're all there not just to get usually their own thing ticked off, but to help, the person running next to them as well. It's not like a competition like you often have in a road run, and not to mention, of course, the people supporting who are in who are there to help support the runners, but also the people you're running with. Everybody just is so amazing that it's the community that people often come back for.
That's exactly it. And I think that's why it grows, why it's grown so much, because for so long, we're getting fed so much bullshit about what it is that we should be doing, or, what's the latest in the news, or what's the latest in politics, or what celebrities doing what, or whatever. And I think, I don't think I'm alone in saying, at times I've lost myself in what I'm really, I don't want to have a big bloody flash house, or I don't want to have, 2,000 properties, or I'm never going to be a millionaire. I'm never, because, I love to give back. So, but if I can take out of this what I need to survive and to support my family and my kids and my wife, and she obviously supports as well, but, why would I need to take any more out of it than that? I'm not trying to build a conglomerate. I'm just trying to build a platform. And why, I think that's where it comes back to the whole community thing. Like, people are realising that they want to be involved in a community, because the community is calm, it's peaceful, it's away from the BS that we were talking about just before, and it's a belong. We want to belong somewhere, and belonging is really important, because it's again, that comes back to our mental health. When you belong somewhere, or you find that you fit in somewhere, well, suddenly you find that you're validated. And you don't need a society saying you should be doing this. When community is so accepting, because everyone on the trails has very different ability to the next person. And sure, 5% of people are still going to race it and be competitive. And that's my bit of competitive. And I might not come first, but that's still where I'm being competitive. I'm being competitive with myself. And everyone can still go out there and set their own little challenges and goals, but just being out there and running is so spiritually uplifting. And I think that's why we're all growing so much in the trail running community, and that's why we've been fortunate enough to have a platform there for people to come and join us in this stupid stuff.
So I think, having $1 million versus having a platform to be able to provide that impact in people's lives, that's worth more than $1 million or multiple billions of dollars anyway, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, look, I've kind of resigned to the fact that I am who I am, and financially it's always going to be just enough to get by and make a few smart choices here and there, hopefully, but certainly going to have a shitload of fun along the way. So
it's the impact that's important as well.
Exactly.
I think I can read from everything you said. Now, can I ask you, when did you start running? Was that, when you supported your friend in the coast of Kosciuszko? Hey, were you already running yourself then?
I think we touched on this earlier. I was started running late 2000s.
Okay, that's right.
I don't know how many runs I've done. I think I've maybe done 20 or 30 marathons, and I think I've done maybe 40 ultra marathons or thereabouts.
So what do you do now? What does your personal running look like right now?
I have actually chipped a few off over the last couple of years. I think I did 6 in 2021. I think I did like 6 ultra marathons.
Yeah.
I did maybe 3 or 4 last year, 4 or 5 maybe. I've managed to sneak in a couple of hours, like the backyard ultras, because I normally go to a certain distance or whatever I can do, and then jump into RD rolls after that, while some people are filling my shoes or helping out themselves. So yeah, I did a 50k run along the beach called Sandman Ultra a couple of weeks ago, and which I'll never ever do again.
Was it the sand? What was it?
It was the camber, the slope killed me, and the sand. Just man, mentally that was tough, and I guess I'm a bit weaker in that these days, in wanting to push through stuff like that because I just can't be asked.
I did a 2-day hike a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, along a beach. It was quite, and that had the camber and the soft sand. I was like, this is not fun.
Oh well, I was lucky to have any soft sand, which was amazing. But yeah, I'm happy to set events up that go along beaches, but run up myself, I would do that. What else? I'm going to try and do some of the Perth Trail Series stuff this year, which is, and then maybe over in SA, when I'm in SA, the TRSA stuff. So that is the shorter course stuff. So I want to try and get out the trails and do a bit of that. It's only 10 to 20K, I suppose, usually most of them. But if I can get out and do a few of those, that'd be cool for myself. I'm going to try and do Birdie's Backyard again this year, which is one of our events. But I've got a couple of RDs already lined up. So if I can hopefully crack that 24-hour barrier and get through that, and I'm always, as much as I can, I'm always going to try and do the one in Hysterical Carnage in Loxton, which is my old hometown in South Australia. I did that this year or just gone. It's in November, and that event means a lot to me. That's really cool. I did Light Horse Ultra last year, which was the 24 hours telling me about, and my dad did it with me and my wife as well, and another really great mate, and that really great couple of mates, and all 5 of us got to ultra distance, and my dad popped his ultra marathon cherry at 72 years of age.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So he's a Vietnam vet, and he's got a bung foot, but he just kept chipping away at doing it and became an ultra marathoner. So
that's fantastic.
Look, apart from that, I'd love to do some stuff interstate this year if I can, but I'm going to focus a bit more on. I've got a couple of trips planned with my kids and my wife and our little bub. Got a couple of those trips planned, so probably going to do more adventures this year. So we got a little baby coming in the next week or so. So we're planning on doing some adventures with him or her. And that'll kind of be either side of events interstate that we'll do. So we got this event in Cairns, and then we're going to spend a couple of weeks road tripping down to the Gold Coast at the end of it. Just I don't know, probably more adventures and more family stuff this year.
With the baby,
hopefully I can chip away a few little runs here and there when I'm over there for work, but we'll see things out.
Like most people I talk to who are very keen on their running, one of the questions that we ask is, how do you fit in your training? Like, what does your training look like? You've got, you could sit at that desk all day long and just organise events and not get up and still not be at the end of all the list of jobs I'm sure you've got to do. So it's like, how do you fit it all in?
Look, I guess, I resigned a few years ago, probably about 2019, resigned to the fact that this I'm getting so much more out of putting these events on than running them myself. So look, I've had my time in the past to have fun and run lots, and I'll still keep running bits here and there, and I'm sure at some stage in the future Simone alongside me here is going to take over all the race directing duties, and then I'll get to run them. That's good, Simone. Yeah, giggling. I don't think that's going to happen, she reckons. But look, the opportunity for me with running at the moment is to provide these platforms. It's not really to run myself. Like, I've lost any sort of competitiveness, which I'm really completely fine with. And I enjoy, to be honest, I enjoy going and cutting laps on these backyard ultras when I get to run them with my mates. I don't want to take myself too seriously at the moment with running. Because
you must do some training though. Like in order to even just to be able to put your shoes on and run around in a backyard ultra.
Look, honestly, like some of my runs, like I might do 40K in the 4 weeks leading up to 100 miler.
Yeah.
I got with Feral Pig a few years ago, but I suffered. I was really good for about the first 20 hours and then absolutely died in the arse after that. But I knew that was coming. I know. Look, I know what I expect. Look, I try. I guess I try and do part run most weekends. And then my wife's really disciplined, and we always go for walk. We usually go for runs, but obviously been up the duff now. The last few weeks that slowed down a bit. But we still go for walks probably most days. And off the piss now as much as I can be. I just chipping away at trying to keep myself in shape, I suppose, so that if I do want to go, all right, let's go and do this. We can. I could go and do a 100K week. Like in October, I think I did, or September maybe, I did a 300 and something K week. That was just trying to do that calendar, where you run 1K on the first, 2K on the second, 3K on the third, etc. I got up to, I think, about the 19th and then tweaked a hammy, and then by about the 22nd was buggered and was broken. So, but that's still, I think the foundation's always there. Sometimes it might take a couple of weeks to, reset the trigger on it. But, I think once you're an ultramarathoner, you're always an ultramarathoner, because you've overcome that mental side of things, because physically your body is freaking amazing, and it will follow you no matter how much you're dragging its ass along. It'll still follow you if you can mentally be in that zone. So, I don't know.
So more often than not, really what you're saying is it's our brain that gives up on whatever physical endeavor we're trying to do, not so much our body. As a rule, most people can't push their body further than their body can physically do. I
reckon, once you've done an ultramarathon, you do need to obviously try and get your body into as great a shape as you can to break that cherry at the start. But once you get into it, I think 90% is mental. Maybe more, because physically your body, your body can do it. It's going to hurt sometimes more than not, but your body's still capable of doing it. So I did that. So that Sandman that I did a few weeks ago on the 50K, like at 34K or 36K mark or whatever, I'd given up. I resigned to just walk. I wasn't going to quit because there was no way I was ever coming back to it. But don't get me wrong, it is a fantastic event. It is great. It's so well done. And I'd actually highly recommend people do it, because mentally it takes you to
challenge.
Really deep, dark place that, is great to get out of. But at the 36K mark, I was resigned to just walking back in, just walking the rest of the way in, because I was still going to come in well under cut-off. And then a mate ended up picking me up, and begrudgingly we did a walk-run strategy to get to the end. But, physically I thought I was stuffed, because my glutes were, my hammies going into my glutes, which I've had issues with from that calendar run that I was telling you about. They were not happy with me at all. And yet the next day I went out and ran a 16 or 17K trail run at, just over 5 minute pace.
Wow.
With the switchbacks and everything like that. And I was cranking along. Saw particularly on the uphills, and flats were fine. So mentally, my body was saying, it had tricked me to going, no, your hammies and glutes are stuffed. You can't go anymore. And obviously, they were fine. They were sore.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had that trigger go, no, you're going to tear them, stop. Whereas in the end, I was just being weak.
That's crazy. How long do you think you'll run for, Shaun? Like, you already talked about your dad having just
Till I die, for
till
sure.
you die. Nice.
Yep.
Love
So
it.
Gene Dykes at the moment, he's from America. He's got the world record for a marathon under 70 as a 70-year-old, and it's like 2:53 or something.
Oh, good Lord.
Look, I can't even do that now. I probably could if I trained for it. I've done a 1:22 half.
Yeah,
So
wow.
probably within my scope. But look, I don't think I'm ever going to be that fast or competitive at 70 years of age, but he has done a 200 miler at 70 years of age. And I would love to be able to go and do stuff like that. Got a really, really beautiful mate here, Frank Chavot. We call him French Frank because he's obviously French, who lives down in Busselton here in WA, and he's running Delirious 200 miler in a few weeks' time from his 69th birthday into his 70th birthday.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he's such a beautiful friend of ours and beautiful friend of everyone. He's a magical soul. But, you know, I want to be like Frank when I'm his age. So
you need a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frank.
Yeah. That is a great idea. So I just think I hope I'm still doing it then, as long as I don't burn myself out, as long as I keep myself entertained with other stuff outside of trail running in the meantime, which is happening. I'll just maybe keep having more kids. They take up time.
There you go. Yeah, and they'll keep you busy too. Like, they keep you moving, having children. Yep. I've noticed, just to keep up with them. Shaun, one of the questions I ask everybody pretty much is, what would your life be like had you not started running? What would you be missing out on? What's it given your life, I suppose?
I wouldn't
positive way to
like to think of what it would be like without running. In fact, I couldn't even give you an answer to that because I don't like what ifs. Yeah. I don't like the question, what if this happened or what if that happened? I'm like, well, just make it happen.
What's the best thing running's given you then?
Community, like the people I surround myself in. So, like they're so beautiful. You know, I've got so many incredible friendships. I've met some amazing people. We've built a really strong community. Look, I've met my wife through running. Look, it's kind of an endless scenario. You know, I guess I'm really proud, like I said earlier, of what we've built. You know, at the recent national championships for the backyard ultras, half the field was from Perth or from WA, from our backyard ultras. You know, from the Ultra Series family, and you know, I think the pedigree of what we've got here is amazing. And that, you know, that selfishly also gives me so much. You know, that pride. You know, I think I'm always going to try and be humble about what we have because, you know, one thing that really appeals to me about ultra running and the trail running is the lack of arrogance in it. You know, the egos are few and far between, and I love that. You know, I'm really going to try and do whatever I can to, with our philosophies of keeping that down. So, you know, running certainly given me that perspective. Yeah, you know, and I think we've touched on it with my running mentally. You know, mentally it's taken me to a much more peaceful and sustainable place. Look, I'm really active mentally. You know, the mind is constant, and this has given me something that I can safely sustain for my mind as well, which keeps me, you know, keeps me out of the depression hole. It keeps me pretty stable, to be honest. It certainly has made, you know, I've failed in business ventures before. I've lost lots and lots of money. And it certainly set me up to be a bit smarter, even though I love taking risks, but they're more calculated risks now with kind of a fallback. So it's taught me that. And I guess it's like I said earlier, one of my favourite things in life is to create new things that have never been either thought of before or people have never done it. Because why can't we do something? Like what's stopping us from putting on a 200 miler in Australia? What's stopping us from doing a point to point on a really remote part of the course of the Bibbulmun track? If we can put things in place that can allow this to happen for people, and no one had gone there, and yet we've gone there. But anyone can do anything that they really set their mind at if they are willing to give it a try, but put not necessarily everything you've got into it, but put everything you can mentally and physically give up into it to make it successful. And look, I know I'm going to make lots more mistakes. I made quite a few last year, but I own them, and I always will, because and I hope, to be honest, I do keep making mistakes, because I'm certainly recognising, because I want to keep learning, and I just want to be the best version of myself, and I think running has put me in an environment where I don't have to be anyone other than who I am.
Yeah.
And that's it. Actually, I have certainly over the last few years in getting remarried and being, my wife now is the most beautiful soul I think I've ever met on this planet.
Aww.
But the one thing that she does is she really respects who I am and she does not want me to change at all. Like, we work in beautiful symmetry together. We're both very, very independent.
Yeah.
But we're both quite respectful, very respectful of that. But one thing I've really learned with her is that she loves me just the way I am. And with running and being in Ultra Series, I'm a little bit crazy. I'm a little bit left of centre, and I certainly do things a little bit differently. But that's who I am, and running has allowed me to be that. And I don't need to change for anyone, because as long as I'm respectful to everyone around me, running allows me to be exactly who I am. And look, I've been living a lie on who I was previously, just because I wasn't who I really was. I was trying to be, but I was giving up so much more of me for the sake of others, and I don't have to do that anymore. And
it's not healthy either. That's
exactly it. Yeah, and look, I still go through little slumps here and there, mentally, down into the depths, the uglier depths. But it's nothing that isn't quick to respond, and I guess I'm also really, really aware of it. And that's the number one factor why I don't drink. Well, I really try not to. Occasionally, I might have a little tipple for a special occasion, but it's been a fair while. Oh, it hasn't been years, but it's certainly been many, many months now, and I know what that can do to people, and look, I think, which I know is obviously quite passionate with you. I think mentally, if we can, our mind is capable of so many amazing and wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things in life. And if we give it the opportunity and the ability to be doing it, then, you might just amaze yourself on what you're capable of. And certainly there's no way I thought I'd be where I am talking to you right now about, how mentally amazing ultra running is and how much it's, taken over my life. If you just believe in an idea or believe in what you could potentially be capable of doing, then give it a bloody good shot, because regret can be a painful thing. So don't have it.
There's a lot of those sayings, isn't it, about, when people are on their deathbed and what they wish that they had done. And a lot of it, that is the times where they talk themselves out of doing something or taking a risk.
Well, look, I definitely think I would love to have done this 20 years earlier, but 20 years earlier, trail running wasn't what it is today. And,
that's so
20 years earlier, I was still a stupid, naive, ignorant, risk-taking person that just wasn't wise enough to the world to be able to do what we're doing now. So, and I still might fail in things that we're doing. And I
hope you do, because that's when you learn the most, when you fail, actually.
Yeah, exactly. But, I think 1,000 runners that have been part of our events, and that's 7,000 people that have had a crack at what Ultra Series believes in, and hopefully in 3 years' time I'll be saying we got maybe 15,000 people or whatever. But all I want to do is ensure that we keep true and we help people become a better version of themselves.
I just love it. I love everything that you talk about, Shaun. I think it's amazing. And as I said, Thanks, you are encouraging me to do some more ultra running, especially on trails. I think they're very forgiving. It's forgiving in that they're hard still, but they have downhills. And anyway, I like trail running. Can you tell us more? Like, I have been fascinated before we run, and I've already kept you a long time, but as I talked to you before about the backyard and the front yard ultras, the first time I even heard about them was from one of your competitors on the podcast. So, and I've had a number of them pop up and talk about it. But as the person who's brought it to Australia, tell us how did that happen? What's its inception?
No, I'll correct you there. I didn't actually bring it to Australia.
Okay.
Some crew on the East Coast have been doing it for a few years longer than me and been doing a fantastic job. So there's Clint Eastwood up in Queensland.
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. It's called Clint Eastwood. Backyard Ultra, yeah. That's a cracker there. The Murrum Werner team in Victoria that do one. They just held the backyard satellite championships last year there. We brought it to WA.
Okay.
South Australia as well, because no one were doing them there. But yeah, we've just we do ours a little bit differently. There's always quite a party atmosphere about what we have with ours, and again, they're all quite individual. They're all standalone events, but for those of you that don't know what it is, it's basically you run a 6.71k circuit on the hour every hour until the last person standing, and the last person can only go one more lap than the assist, so then the second last person. So once the second last person drops out, basically it's there's one lap to go and then the event's over. So but has no real time frame. You don't know when that finish is going to be. And the 6.71 Ks in 24 hours is 100 miles. It works out to exactly 100 miles. So that's where that random statistic comes from. And it was actually designed, and we all work under the umbrella of Lazarus Lake, the guy who creates Barclays Marathon. There's nearly 500 now these events around the world, all held at different times of the year, and we are just fortunate to. Australia has absolutely jumped up the rankings. We're now ranked number 3 in the world.
Wow.
Again, through the Ultra Series runners, I think we've got 7 of the top 100 in the world are based in Perth, or based in WA. One of them lives in Kalgoorlie, it's just a really intriguing format because the Australian national record has gone from I think 44 hours 2 years ago. Then it's just grown out to 48 hours. Then it went out to 51 hours to 54 hours or 56 hours, I think it was. Then it went out to 59 hours, and now it's gone out to 76 hours. So 76 hours is a long bloody way. I think that's like 500 odd K.
By who did the 76?
Phil Gore.
Phil, that's right. Phil's been on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh yes.
I've had Phil.
Yeah, well, he's Mr. Backyard. He's unbeatable these days, you know. So
amazing.
It's just but I think that one of the greatest things about that format, which really appeals to me, is that all abilities can run it. Again, it's got nothing to do with speed. All you need to be able to do is 6.71k an hour every hour. So you can walk, run that comfortably. So you got a fair bit of time. So it does open up the abilities to so many different other runners. But the other great thing is the start-finish line is such a spectator-friendly area for your support crew, which often you don't get in an ultramarathon.
Yeah.
Ultramarathon, you might send someone, like I said earlier, the Feral Pig Ultra, people don't actually get to see their runners until 43K. Wow. And then not again until the 70K mark. Yeah. Whereas with this one, you see them every single hour and they come back and you get to reset and recharge with them and then go again. And they're going to come straight back to you again. So, that's a really, really appealing part of the format, and it will just only grow from strength to strength moving forward. So, what a wicked format of ultramarathoning. And, I love it, and really proud of the four of them that we have on. So
it is. It's quite, because as I said to you before, I've been involved in handicap races here every Saturday through winter. 20 weeks in a row since I was in my 20s, been part of helping them happen here where I live, and I've always been proud of that, being anyone can win. That's so. It doesn't matter if you're a slow runner or a fast runner. Everyone has that opportunity to cross the line first, which I've always loved. But this concept has a similar kind of ethos, as you said. Anyone can do, it's up to them. They don't have to be fast. It really is a mental game in the end. Like, can you stay up for 24 hours if you run that long? For example, it's a mental thing, isn't it? So I love it. Yeah, it's exciting. And it's a bit more exciting than a track running. Really... the ones that those times 6 and 12 hour ones, I have been involved in those just as a helper and lap counter. And they had that cool thing where you every 400 meters you could go to the toilet or sit down and have a massage or whatever. But this is a bit bit more exciting.
A lot of start-stopping though if you're doing that every 400 meters.
I know. It's kind of crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, I've done them too. So then they're again another mentally very challenging format. So,
absolutely.
Whereas the backyard ultras, look, they're so much fun. Yeah, you can. They're just a brilliant format, and I think, to be honest, probably the funnest type of ultramarathon to be involved in. So, and certainly the deeper you go, the more it becomes mental. Whereas the first half is potentially quite fun because you're hanging with your mates and just walking and talking shit and pardon my swearing. Sorry, I've been refrained. We swear lots more than this, but. It's good fun. It's good fun for at least the first half of however far you go.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something we should all look out for. Are there any in Tassie at all? I'm not aware.
There isn't. Yeah, I alluded to earlier. We were planning on launching the Devil's Lair, just going into New Year's.
Great name.
And it was going to be the only one in the world where it ran over 2 years. So we're going to start it in 2022 and run it into 2023.
Clever.
But sadly, I hit my brick wall at the end of October and realised that I just couldn't make it happen. Like, the numbers were great already. They were probably about what we were hoping. I won't say that it exceeded what we were after yet, but they were certainly better than what we thought they could have been. And we had so many more inquiries even after we'd called it to do it, whether it was still going to be on. But it was not from lack of wanting to do it. It was just a lack of ability. So we had our truck and equipment all ready, and it was actually already all packed in SA, I believe, ready to go. But it was, it was just a point where, I just couldn't give something that I didn't have to give. So we made a call and just refunded everyone 100% and said, look, sorry, but this is not going to be what you signed up for if we try and go ahead with it. And the repercussions are going to be much wider for Ultra Series if that's the case, because we're not going to have that little bit of break that we need to recharge. So but again, that's, I guess, failing at something, but I don't really look at it as failure. I look at it as learning, because we knew 2022 was going to be a year where we were more than likely going to be biting off more than we could chew, but we wanted to find where that threshold was. And that threshold in the end turned out being 19 cents, but it was still too much. And then, and we've pulled it back to something which we think will be absolutely incredible for 2023 and a pretty exciting 2024. Just refining what we've got. We're not planning on growing anymore now for the next few years. And, we'll just keep with what we've got and see where that takes us in life.
Well, that's so exciting. As I've already said lots of times, it is very exciting. Is there anything about running that you wanted to share that we haven't touched on, just in our in and out of event side of running?
I think we've probably already touched on it, but don't. I guess my biggest tip into life is don't go into your first ultra marathon, not in life, but in ultra running. Don't go into your first
life,
ultra marathon. Yeah, it is life.
Which is life.
Don't go into it to race it. Just go in to experience it, because you go in to race it, you'll very likely come out disappointed, because either one, you'll bonk because you've gone too hard in something which was harder than what you expected to be, or you'll come out of it and realise that you didn't achieve what you'd thought. You really want to go in and just give it a crack first to see what it is that it takes, and just go and run it. Go and just don't be competitive. Your only sole focus should be to get it done, to get the job done, because then you'll come out like with emotions and an experience of elation that you've accomplished something that you probably never thought you would ever go down. And that will be far more pivotal in your life than bonking because you've raced it, or even getting it done but feeling disappointed because you didn't get a time. So and the other tip is to you don't need to go and jump into an ultra marathon. Go and do parkrun. Parkrun's an amazing platform that is available everywhere around the country, everywhere. Well, not everywhere around the world, but in so many different places around the world. It is free. It is 5K. It is every single Saturday at either 7 o'clock if you're in Queensland. I think 8 o'clock just about everywhere else around the world.
9 o'clock here.
Around the country.
9 o'clock in Tassie.
9 o'clock in Tasmania.
We're a different part of the whole world.
Go and do it, because from there you start surrounding yourself with these people that we've been raving on about for the last hour and a half or 2 hours, however long it's been. And that's where it starts. That's where I started. I started at 5K. I didn't start at parkrun because it wasn't in Australia then, but I did start at 5K with a local running group, and then it's just growing from there. So go and get involved in that and volunteer. Oh, coincidentally happen to be wearing my my Russian volunteer t-shirt today. Volunteering is freaking awesome. Look, yes, it doesn't give you the same elation yourself and then I ever get something that a fraction of the population in the world will ever get to do, but you're there helping someone achieve that, and it's really, really important. So, and I'm not saying that in a plug for volunteers. We've got our own ways that we go about it. I'm saying because it is so much more rewarding than you will ever realise. So, and you'll know that coming out of so many repeat volunteers, especially for the big long stuff, which some of our events, like the shifts are like 50 to 60 hours are a volunteer role. Obviously they rotate with people that are there, but they're on that location for that long. And yet the next year they're there putting their hand up to be involved again. So it is so bloody rewarding. So, I guess they're my two little bit of running advice that I could give.
Yeah. So if someone came to you as a beginner runner, that's what you would say to them if they said they wanted to start running because you've inspired them to, go do a 200-mile trail run?
Well, I guess, look, if it's something they're dead serious about wanting to tackle something like, well, then we'd probably kind of handball them to some coaches.
Yeah.
If that's the sort of platform that they're thinking, and that's entirely up to them. We don't have we have Ultra Series coaching, but it's actually nothing that we financially get anything out of. All we do is set them up with four coaches that are aligned with us, as in they have their own coaching businesses, but they're just kind of
you can recommend
trying to help offer services to our community. So we, if that's the case, we might put them down that line. But yeah, that's all depending on how serious they want to get into this stuff. If not, not all of them, but a lot of our ultra marathons have shorter distance options as well. So we might have a 5 or a 10K or a 20K or a 25K or something like that aligned with one of the ultras. Yeah. If that's the case, just come and do one of the shorter ones. So, but if they're prepared and want to be a bit disciplined and determined to maybe come and give a 50K a crack, if they're prepared to do their own training set up for them, well then, we have nearly all of our 50, in fact, I think all of our 50K options have got ridiculously generous cutoffs. There might be 12 hours, there might be 11 hours, there might be, one of our 50Ks, I think, has like a 20-odd hour cutoff because the longer events start behind it and catch up with them along the way, if you get what I mean. So the aid stations are already going to be open. So there's no and look, we had this beautiful lady at Hyson this year do her very first ever ultra marathon, and it was the 50K, and I think it took her about 17 hours, but she did it. She came in. I love it a bit. She's such a determined lady from South Australia, Melissa. I hope you're listening. And she got it done, and I gave her the biggest hug at the end, and it was just so beautiful to see her, shed a tear, but just realise that she achieved something that she'd been striving to achieve for a while. So, look, if you want to do a 50K, we're going to put everything in place to help you get there along the way. And the cutoffs are great. The aid stations are like oases in so many places. And, it's only you that's going to stop you.
Yay. Oh, I love it. All right. Well, anyone's interested in any of these things, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't be because it's very infectious. It makes me want to go and sign up straight away. I'll put all the details in the show notes for them. So you'll get more people coming from Tassie. In fact, I think one of the first people to talk about you guys was a bloke from here, from Scottsdale, I think, who's on a farm. What was it? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he's one of your Tassie. He's Tassie's best backyard ultra runner.
It might be.
So at the moment, people might catch up with him though.
There could be Tassie's best, blah blah blah, like fastest, irrational south, or something crazy like that. And also, there's a runner in Melbourne. I'm terrible with people's names. I always forget them. She wears very colourful clothes though, and she's run all. Kirsten Mapleston. Yes, I knew once I heard her name so she's been on the podcast too, and I think she mentioned you.
Yeah, she's the RD now at Hysterical Carnage in Loxton.
Oh, there you
at the backyard up to there. Yeah.
Weirdly, I'm not surprised.
Only started in November, and now I've sucked her in to come back again next year. So
go you.
It's all good. That way I can run it.
She's awesome. I love her.
Yeah.
Anyway, like I said, it's been amazing to have a chat with you, Shaun. We could just keep talking for hours and hours. We've taken a lot of your time.
Rather long 45-minute chat, but that's all good.
Oh, no. Look, it just went on and on and on. It's crazy. Don't jump off straight away, but I will say goodbye to you off the recording as well. But again, really grateful for the amount of time that you've spent with us. And I've got a lot out of it. I'm sure that people listening to will as well. So thank you.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. I'd love to talk to you about your running journey. So send me a message on Facebook or on the website and let's do it. For a bunch of resources on mindful running that will help you get and stay mentally and physically fit, head over to the website fitmindfitbody.co and I'll see you there. Plus, I'll be back here in your podcast player a few times a week. Hit subscribe now so that you don't miss an episode. And before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a review. It'll help more people to find the podcast and get inspired to start running. I'll see you soon. Bye.